Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Pursuit Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Engineer, and on today's episode, we are joined by a super special guest, 2020 Olympic medalist, Maddy Bernau. We discuss how she got started shooting competitively through high school and college, qualifying for the Olympic team, of course her experience in Japan at the Games, and balancing her busy training schedule while trying to obtain her graduate degree. Please welcome Maddy Bernau. All right, everyone, like we just mentioned in the intro, we are here with Maddy Bernau. Did I say that right, Maddy?
Perfect. Maddy Bernau, Maddy
Very
Bernau.
good.
Everyone says it differently.
Perfect. Maddy Bernau. All right, cool. And then, like always, the man behind the switches, Mr. Ben Johnson, is with us as well.
Hey, what's up?
And then we have a very special guest here at Vance Outdoors, Mr. Andrew Hyder, our firearms buyer and resident competitive pistol shooter. Sir, how we doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for taking the time to sit down and talk to us today. I know, Maddy, you definitely have a busy schedule. Andrew is very busy too. So, again, I appreciate you guys being able to take some time out today and talk to us. To go ahead and get things started, Maddy, let's go ahead and introduce yourself as well as your background and kind of what got you started into shooting.
My name is officially Madelynn Bernau. That's what I go by overseas, but my nickname's Maddy. I am an international bunker trap athlete. I competed at the 2021 technically Olympic Games this past summer since they were postponed. I've been to World Championships. I've been overseas to World Cups. I'm a Team USA member for USA Shooting and go overseas and compete for them internationally. I started shooting when I was a little girl, about 8, 9, 10 years old. I got into hunting with my dad when he kind of wanted to start getting me into it. My mom was a little hesitant, but she eventually gave in and let my dad finally take me out, and I loved it. And then we got into the clay target disciplines through 4-H, and I just kind of continued it through high school into college and eventually found bunker trap along the way.
Awesome. So when your dad was taking you out, what was the game of choice for you guys? In Wisconsin, right? If I'm not mistaken, you're from rural Wisconsin?
Yeah. Yep. I am from southeastern Wisconsin, kind of like an hour and a half north of Chicago,
Okay.
and he would take me turkey hunting. That was the first thing that we got into. It was just, a simple thing where we would go out at like 5:30 in the morning on a kind of crisp spring Wisconsin morning, and I went out and shot my first bird the first day I ever went hunting, actually, which was pretty exciting. And then he got me into the American discipline of trap shooting when I was about 11 years old. It was probably a year after I started hunting that we found that sport, and I shot that for about another 3 years until I actually found the other clay target disciplines when I was competing as intermediate and a high school student.
Awesome. Yeah, so you kind of took it, you T-balled it up for me right here. I was just going to dive right into competitive shooting. So so you went through 4-H and then obviously through high school. Let's go ahead and get into kind of the collegiate level and the shooting and how you progressed through the college. And then I know I've heard you on another podcast talk about as well. You had a little bit of a hiccup, if you will, during your collegiate time. So if you want to kind of discuss that as well.
Yeah, so I went through high school. I competed through the SCTP program and I didn't really find the international discipline through that. My dad kind of found it on the side. So we attended a camp and I really didn't like it. I didn't really like the sport at all. I actually found it extremely hard, more mentally hard than anything. And I just wasn't prepared to take on the task of trying to compete in that event when the other sports seemed to come so easy to me. So I kind of just let it fall to the side. I found that sport when I was like 16 years old. So I really didn't do anything major in it until I was actually 19 years old. I finally went to my dad and was like, okay, I really actually want to try. And I went to my first USA shooting selection match and I placed in the top 10 ladies and I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't even know what the course of fire was. I just attended my first event down in, I think it was Fort Benning, Georgia at the time, and ended up placing top 10 and was like, okay, maybe I can do this, and kept going to events. And the following year I made a world championship team for juniors and progressed through that. And as when the year I made Junior World Championship team, I was currently going to Simpson College as a sophomore in Iowa, and I was being coached under my late coach. Actually, he just passed away, Mr. Scott Monyo. He used to coach at Concordia, Nebraska. He just passed away this last fall, and he was coaching me at Simpson, and he called me in the summer of 2018, about 3 months after I made the World Championship team and was preparing for it, and he said, "You have to switch colleges." And I'm like, "What?" And I was out to dinner with friends in Colorado at a shoot, and he was like, "Yeah, you have to transfer colleges within a month." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he walked me through that my college was going to get rid of the program. We weren't going to be very much funded, and I was going to have to pay a lot more money for school, and I couldn't afford it at the time. So within a month, I had to find a different place to go to school. So I had to transfer as a sophomore going into my junior year of college, preparing for and the biggest event that I've ever been to. Um, Basically at the start of my fall collegiate season, and I was transferring schools basically. So that was extremely hard and extremely rough. I ended up going over to Korea, and I didn't do fantastic. It was the biggest event that I've ever been at, so I was a little bit shaky and a little bit rocky, but our ladies team walked away with bronze, which was really cool, and it was actually in Korea. So that was one of the still to date, most interesting places I've ever been to,
Oh, I bet.
traveling overseas. Yeah, it was in South Korea. So that was amazing. And then the following year, I made the World Cup team in 2019, and I went to Finland. And I didn't do anything there. Again, it was my first World Cup. I was still getting my feet a little bit wet in the international discipline. And then I tried out at part one of Olympic trials in the fall of 2019, and I placed fourth. And then we had part two in the spring of 2020, and I actually won that match, but it was a combined score of both parts, where at the end I was second overall, and I took the second Olympic quota spot and was able to go over to Tokyo that summer. Well, the next summer with a postponement.
Oh
But
yeah, definitely. Well, and again, that kind of sets it up too for this next question I had. But I think before we get too far into the international discipline, if you can go ahead and I know some listeners here will probably understand just general trap shooting here as it is in the United States.
mhm.
But if you can explain the international discipline and kind of what all went through with that. And it's funny because I tried to find some videos of your actual matches, and I don't think they were televised, or at least I couldn't find them. So if you can kind of explain to people listening what exactly the bunker trap discipline is and kind of how you go through shooting it.
Yeah, so international bunker trap is done on basically a set of 5 courses of fire. Each course of fire has 25 targets. In American trap, you stand at one station and shoot 5 targets, and then you move. In international, you shoot 1 target, and then you're automatically moving to the next station. So you're constantly rotating. You never stay on one station for more than a target. You still get 25 targets, just like a normal round of American trap, but instead of only 5 shooters, you can have up to 6. So you always have someone kind of waiting behind the line of fire, kind of ready to step into that next station once it's clear. So it's a constant fluid motion basically. And then once you get to 5, you kind of walk around everyone around the refs and go all the way back to 1. American trap targets fly at about a speed of 45 to 48 miles an hour. My targets, depending on where you are in the world, if you're closer to sea level, they have to fly faster. They have to meet a distance of about 78 meters, I believe it is, and they have to fly anywhere from, like I said, if you're low at sea level, they have to fly a lot quicker, so they can fly upwards of 75 miles an hour. But if you're in Colorado, they can fly at 68, 67 miles an hour.
That's pretty
The
wild.
targets can be,
That's
yeah.
wild. Andrew,
Yep,
Andrew could probably hit one of those with this pistol, right, Andrew?
I have actually done that. Yes, I did get called out by a friend, and I did have to do that. So
Really? That's cool. Yeah, I like to tell people they fly about as fast as a car on the interstate, about the average speeds. That kind of gets people to be like, wow, that's pretty quick, and it is. And the angles are different. So in trap, you have a 45-degree angle of play for the targets to rotate. In my sport, you have 90 degrees of play. So
Okay.
you can have a 45-degree left and a 45-degree right. The targets can be anywhere from, I believe, half a meter off the ground to 3.5 meters high. So whereas American Trap, it stays on one plane, it doesn't alternate height. We can alternate height in ours. The targets, though, in our sport are locked down. They don't alternate like an American Trap thrower does. So we have 15 throwers in a house that are locked down to a specific target, which you think it's easy, you think you should know all the targets coming out, but it's a computerized system that gives you 2 lefts, 2 rights, and a straightaway at every station. So the computer knows what you've already gotten. So theoretically, your last round, you could play the guessing game and be like, oh yeah, I've gotten 2 lefts, 2 rights, I should get the straightaway at this. So you can kind of, essentially, it's not called cheating, it's called counting targets, but I can't do that because I'll be like, oh, did I get the left twice or the right twice?
Exactly.
And then I'll jump the wrong way and, I'll be way off. So I don't do that.
It's kind of like playing that game of poker or blackjack or something where you know what's left in the hand and you can kind of guesstimate on what kind of draw you have. So
yep,
that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's interesting. And obviously the height, you said the height can vary from anywhere between, I missed that, but what was it, half a meter?
Yeah, it's about a half a meter to 3.5. I'm uncertain with the specific rules. Oh, it's 1.5 to 3.5. Sorry, I have one of my friends around who's listening with me. He's set bunker schemes before. I should know this, but it changed. I got into the sport when the rules just changed in 2017 from what they were before. So I was learning the before rules, then got to this rules, and then they just changed again. They change every quad basically. So I'm still a little fuzzy on the rules. I just really like to go out and shoot targets. So.
Hey, that sounds fun. Heck yeah. Heck yeah. So let's kind of start diving into shooting for Team USA. So you went through the qualifications and you made the team. Kind of what was your process mentally from shooting from just like the collegiate level or even some of the lower level stuff into shooting for the actual national team?
So it was actually interesting. I've been asked this question a lot. I actually never made the national team before I made the Olympic team. It was an interesting progression. I went through the normal ranking of just shooting as a competitor. I made an SCTP team early on, and then like 6 months later I made the world championship team and was technically put on a junior travel team because I made the junior team. I didn't make the like open national team. And then the next year I made a World Cup travel team, and it wasn't really the national team again. And then the next year I made the Olympic team. So I never really shot for the national team until they put me on the national team when I made the Olympic team, of course. But I actually jumped from juniors to Olympic team, and it was pretty interesting going from being kind of like, I called myself a wild card because I would kind of jump in with the open girls every now and then some matches I would still be right behind them competing as a junior. And then all of a sudden it was like in the year that 2019, when we were trying out for the Olympic team, all of a sudden it was like, oh, I'm in top 6 and competing with the big girls right now. And it was actually it wasn't any sort of a nervous breakdown, but it was a severe like emotion flip for me. Like I got nerves I've never experienced before. I got very hyper, very anxious, very timid. I was starting to doubt myself, but that's all about the pressure of feeling ready, and I just kind of let it roll with me. So
yeah, that was, I was going to ask, like, kind of what went into your mindset from shooting for like junior World Cups and shooting World Cups into shooting for the actual,
sure, coaching has a big big role in that as well.
Yeah, definitely. If you have a second, you can certainly shout out your coaches too, if you'd like.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I had, like I said, my first ever coach was my dad, and then Christopher Bernau. He's been my rock ever since. But of course, when I started progressing in the sport, he couldn't keep up with what I needed to keep pushing me forward. So when I went to college was actually my first real coach, and his name was Scott Mugnot. Like I said, he coached for Simpson College when I went there, and then he transferred to coach for Concordia in Nebraska, where actually a lot of kids that I helped him recruit went. I had a lot of kids that even I helped coach go there and be coached under him. And then he ended up getting extremely sick last fall and passed away. So we celebrated the life of him recently. It was really sweet. And then in addition to him, I've been coached by Jay Waldron, part of USA Shooting, Dwayne Weger, and just any of the USA Shooting coach. But Jay and Mr. Scott have been instrumental in helping me out. So,
is there some help, advice they gave you to overcome the nerves and all the issues that you were going through? Not issues, but all the changes. Did they give you any pointers to help with all that stuff?
It wasn't really pointers that they gave me. It was really just treating like my training and practice like I'm in a match scenario. It was putting me in situations that made me stressed, that made me nervous, that made me kind of panic and kind of like out of my comfort zone, that would actually push me to, when I'm in a competition or when I do feel those nerves arise, that I'm able to control it, but I'm able to use it to my advantage, because nerves aren't a bad thing. It's your body telling you that you're actually ready for this competition, and if you utilize it properly, it can actually push you to perform at the best of your ability. It's almost like a fight or flight response, but it's even more powerful than that. So.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm sure you can echo some of those statements as well from your competitive side as well.
Yeah, so there is a gentleman that his name is Lanny Basham, and Lanny was the founder of. He basically invented the mental management program for athletes, and his story is extremely touching when you hear about it. I mean, he was a small kid, didn't fit in any sports in school. Started shooting rifles in school back when that was allowed, and him and his dad did it as a father-son bonding thing, and then he became extremely good behind a rifle, but he would choke under pressure. And so as he became an Olympian, he basically realized that he had more talent behind a gun than anybody else in the world, but the nerves that he was bringing to the match were basically destroying his performance. So he developed this entire system that talks about subconscious, conscious, that it's very remarkable. He has a book out called With Winning in Mind, and it changed with the help from Steve Anderson, who actually got me into that program. It changed my outlook. Just like she said, you can take those nerves and basically, I call it fuel. You can turn it into fuel for your performance. And as long as you know how to strategically do that, it can be very, very, very beneficial, especially when you're competing at that top level.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for the insight, man. Well, I kind of want to dive in. Obviously, we can't talk to you without talking to you about the Olympics, right? How's it say?
Seems to come up.
Right? Just a little bit. I mean, has that still settled in? I mean, have you grasped it yet? I know you're probably just about a year removed. Does it still feel like real world that you came home with a?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I obviously I get to hold it and touch it, the medal that came home with me. So yeah, it is definitely set in. I will say that last year at about, it's like June now. So yeah, about a month from now, again, I don't have nervous panic breakdowns. I have like just a little bit of like I don't feel ready at all. So there's a conversation between me and my coach at the time, Jay Waldron, where I called him and I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't feel ready. Like I'm literally sick to my stomach. I don't think I can do this. And he was actually in Hillsdale, Michigan at the time, and I live like 5 hours from there, and he didn't even answer my question. He said, can you come out by me? He's like, we're gonna shoot some targets. He's like, let's get you ready. And I was like, yeah, I can come out for about 3 or 4 days. So I went out there for about I can't remember, it was like 3, 4, 5 days, and we just went out and we didn't even really shoot. I shot probably a max of 4 rounds in a day, and I was shooting like horrible. I was shooting, well, not horrible. I was shooting like 21s, 22s, which isn't bad, but of course it's not elite level status. And I was just worried that out of all the Olympians that went from USA shooting for shotgun, out of 8 athletes, like I was going to have like the worst score in the world. And it frightened me because, you know, I didn't get selected. I earned the spot to go because of how I shot. I just worried that my performance wasn't going to reflect that. And my coach kind of just took it all in, everything I was saying, and he really wasn't even, he would help me on the range, and then as soon as we left the range, he wanted nothing to talk about shooting. He was like, let's just talk about the trip. Let's talk about what you're feeling. Let's talk about what you got packed, like what, and just tried to like calm me down. And he's like, you realize when we get overseas, you are going to have like 5 rounds to practice. He's like, you're not really going to get much more than that. He's like, don't worry about the practice set. He's like, we got to figure out how to, you know, he was talking about getting that energy, that emotions, and how to, like how Mr. Andrew said, how to fuel yourself in order to prepare for the competition. So, and we did that. And then I ended up going and shooting a 119 out of 125, which is very respectful, but unfortunately at the time it wasn't competitive enough. In the Olympics, I placed 7th overall individually, 1 target short of being in the final for medals. It was extremely heartbreaking. I've never missed a final by 1 target, so I didn't really know what to do with myself. I kind of kept to myself. I was super supportive of my teammate and partner at the time, Kaylee Browning. She won the silver medal for her, and it was amazing to see, and it was super incredible to have someone from USA bring home a medal in bunker trap. You don't really see that a lot in past Olympics, so I was super proud of her, but also I was just fighting so many battles inside my own head, like what could I have done differently? How could I have prepared differently? And finally I was like, you know what, forget it. I have a whole nother event, like let's see what I can do. And we had a whole training day in between the matches, and I went out and shot like a 69 out of 75. I think it was really bad. It was like I missed 6 targets out of 3 rounds than I did in 5 rounds of my individual, and something, I don't want to say snapped in my head, but it was like something either clicked or snapped or something, I don't know. But I woke up the next morning and I was like, you know what, game on, like I'm going to prove to myself that I deserve to be here. And I went out and ran. I was the only girl on the field to hit all my targets that day in qualification, and my partner Brian followed it up with a 71, so we ended up being tied for 3rd, which put us in the bronze medal match. And then we had to shoot a shoot-off in order to shoot the bronze medal match because they have to decide who goes first. And we ended up losing that shoot-off, but that doesn't matter because we were still in it. It just meant we followed Slovakia, basically. And then the emotions of realizing that everyone back home from USA Shooting is going to be up at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning watching me shoot started to settle in. And my coach finally was like, okay, Brian, Maddy, give me phones now. Like they're gone. Like, don't you do it. And Brian actually was super funny the whole day. For some reason, I had got hooked on reading a book I brought with, and I was just reading it in between rounds, and Brian threw my book at me and was like, you go sit in a corner and you read your book until this final starts. So we had a ton of fun. It was extremely interesting, to say the least, with COVID and everything. I had never been to an Olympics before, so I had nothing to compare it to, but it was funny. I remember this moment very vividly. Vincent Hancock was there. He's a 3-time Olympic gold medalist, and he was right in front of me walking out into opening ceremonies, and he looked up into the grandstands, and I just hear him go, "This isn't it." He's like, and I kind of was like, well, what do you mean? And he was like, it's it. He's like, but this feels nothing like the past. I'm like, oh, well, that's really sad. He's like, Maddy, he's like, this whole arena should be cheering fans, and it's all cardboard.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
It was bizarre.
So that was a little weird. So kind of getting his feedback on what would be different. It was interesting because he could only be there for a short period of time. I was there because you had to leave within 48 hours after your event concluded. So skeet was done 2 days before we started competition. So they were out basically when we started. So yeah, so I got a little bit of feedback from him, and of course everyone else who was there on the shotgun team was new. So it was all kind of a new experience for us, but very, very interesting to
definitely.
say the least. I hope to get to experience a actual, not an actual one because it was the Olympics, but like a little bit more people involved, I guess I should say.
Well, we'll definitely get into that. You're going to have your chance here probably before too long, hopefully. And you kind of took this question right out of my mouth too. So I was going to ask, well, that response also generated another question. So I'll get to that here in a second. But I also wanted to see, like, I'm sure you've been asked this a lot, but with the postponement and being 2021, with COVID and everything, did that extra year give you any, I guess where I'm going at is that some of the athletes, think of like gymnastics and think of swimming, where, you have these males and females that are coming in at a really young age, if you will, for their sport. You have 16, 17-year-olds coming in there. Gymnastics, you're 23, 24, you're a veteran in the sport at that point. And so I feel like they may have been, and I may be totally off base with this, but I feel like maybe some of those athletes may have been at a disadvantage. Do you feel like just given the nature of your sport, that extra time to prepare helped you, or did it hurt you in any way?
I actually think overall because for shooting side, if you actually look at the numbers, USA has by far the youngest athletes representing them across the world. If you look at the average age between us and like different countries, we have the average age. When you see us on TV or in finals, because finals are the only things that are broadcasted for us, they always refer to us as the youngsters because we always have the youngest age. It just happens. And I truly think that the postponement helped the whole team, rifle and pistol and shotgun, all across the board for the Olympics, just because we were all kind of able to bond as a team. We had 20 athletes, I believe, go overseas, and I think we were only supposed to take 19, but then we ended up switching a quota for something, so we were able to get 20, but we had 17 of 19 athletes selected at one point by the time COVID hit. So we kind of already had our team all set up, and shotgun was all selected by the time the COVID pandemic hit. So we didn't really have to retry out for anything, which that was a scare too when the Olympics got postponed. Like, are we going to have to recompete for our spots? And the committee absolutely sent a letter back and was like, nope, we're keeping the team we have. They got the spot fair and square. We're not going to make them recompete for it. That's very unfair, because they had the right to, with it only being a year. If it had been a whole quad, of course we would have had to recompete. But with shooting, I think it doesn't really matter, if the year passes. We were really able to go to a bunch of training camps as a team. I was able to attend, or we were all able to attend another World Cup in Bernau, Italy, about 3 months before the Olympics. And that's actually where I was actually able to compete in an open final because I had the second overall qualifying score. So I was actually able to shoot against Stefizakova and Pirelli and all these athletes that actually medaled in the Olympics. So I was able to actually get my feet a little bit wet competing against some of the best athletes in the world again. And I ended up taking silver at that event individually. That was my first ever individual World Cup medal. So that kind of like, it didn't create an even playing field, but then after that event, every single Olympian has gone overseas, done well, competed with the best of the best, and basically had a resume behind their name going into the Olympics. And in addition to that, they had confidence. We all had confidence going into the Olympics, like, I can do this. I can compete with everyone that's going to be there because everyone was there at the time and basically perform. So it really helped us in that matter of fact that we were able to attend that event and still just bond as a team over the year of the postponement.
Now, I said that you spawned another question here with your earlier response, but so you're walking in for the opening ceremony. You walk in as the entire United States team, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Mm-hmm. Were you starstruck by anybody there that you know? I mean, I don't know how much you follow some of the other sports, but some of the Katie Ledeckis of the world and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's funny because like you think you'd recognize them like when you see their Instagram profiles and stuff all the time, and like when you're walking in a sea of people, you're trying to like look for all those faces and like you just don't see them. I actually met more of those Olympians walking around what is it? The athlete center where they were hosting all the athletes. Yeah, because all the Americans, because we had like 615 or some athletes, we had our whole like building to ourselves. So it was like 15, 14 stories high, with apartment buildings in it. So I actually met more people there that like I've heard of their names before, but I've never really seen them. And me being so young in the sport, I actually felt really bad. I competed after the Olympics. I competed in Cyprus for the President's Cup because I was ranked 11th in the world at the time, and they invited the top 12 to go over there and compete. And there was a guy there. We each got like drew out of a hat for names for mixed team partners. So all of the male trap athletes and all of the female trap athletes, and same with skeet, but I compete in trap. We competed with different people from around the world, and I was partnered up with David Kostelecki from Czech Republic, and I had no idea he was a past Olympic medalist. I felt so bad. He was so sweet and so humble the whole time, and everyone's like, Maddy, you realize like he's a past gold, current silver, da 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 da, and I'm like, I know nothing of my sport, and I feel so bad. I'm so new to it. Like I'm learning all these new names, and like it's still, even with, of course I know like Simone Biles, Michael Phelps, like all of those, like the big names that you see, but unfortunately like some of the other ones, it just slips right past me. I'm actually not the best with names, unfortunately.
It's all good. I would totally be starstruck for sure. There's so many great athletes for our country. So, and I actually did see that picture from the President's Cup of you guys standing on the podium there. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you kind of mentioned like the Olympic Village or like the athlete center, like kind of how was that experience? I'm assuming that you didn't with COVID and the pandemic, I'm assuming you guys weren't able to probably get out and tour as much, but here you are, you're in Japan, you're a girl from, Southeast Wisconsin. How was the overall experience from the trip? And then kind of, if you want, like the testing, and obviously did you guys have to get tested like every day, or like kind of how all did that work as well?
Yeah, so actually, like just kind of starting small from the get-go, we had to test 2 times before even boarding the plane to like go over to Japan. So we had to do 2 at-home tests and prove that we were negative, which luckily the whole team was. We flew over to Japan. They tested the whole flight once we landed. So if anyone tested positive on your flight, the whole flight was like quarantined basically, and then you had to retest. But luckily our whole flight came back clean. We had to wait. The whole testing process and the waiting for results of everybody took about 7.5 hours. We didn't get we landed at like 3, and we didn't get back to the village because it was a drive from the village. We didn't get to the village until like midnight, and then you're still getting room keys, getting your stuff, getting it up to your room, and like they try and help you with your luggage as much as possible, but like of course stuff gets lost. So like we had a couple little hiccups of like, hey, like I'm missing a bag. It was interesting. And since we arrived at night, like we really didn't get to see anything. So like it was kind of like once you woke up in the morning, like you actually got to see it. And we were housed on, I think the shooting team was housed on like the 7th or 6th floor. It's just escaping me, but I was fortunate enough to have a room of my own. I don't know why. I just got that lucky, and I actually like faced the harbor that was out in where the Olympic Village was. So I actually had a really beautiful view of kind of Japan, and the apartments that we were in, or the apartment complexes, had 4 bedrooms with 2 beds in it. So we had a lot of athletes in, and USA Shooting tried to stick with USA Shooting, so we were paired up with rifle, pistol, and shotgun athletes, all in the apartment complexes. And we actually, the athlete village, we were free to go about as we pleased, as long as, we wore a mask as best as we could. Because if you came in contact with, there was a tracking device on our phones that we had to download, where if they tested positive, because we had to do a spit test every day. So it wasn't, thank God it wasn't a nose thing every day. That would have been, that would have been horrible.
Miserable.
Yeah. So literally we just like kind of spit in this tube, and then we were all given a number that we had to give to our our leader at the time, which was our CEO of USA Shooting at the time, Mr. Matt. So we just gave our tubes to him. He turned them in. We luckily never had a problem personally. We did have a thing come up where one of our athletes came in contact with an athlete from another team that tested. It was a whole hiccup, but none of our team luckily had any problems whatsoever other than that. So none of us tested positive. But yeah, we were able to go around the whole athlete housing and not really go into any other athletes housing though. I wasn't able to go in the Australian building or anything like that.
Sure.
It was kind of just being respectful in those ways. But I mean, you saw 20 different countries just walking 30 feet sometimes. It was incredible. And they had a giant 2-story mess hall that was open 24 hours because, everyone competes at different times, and it was huge. They had food from all around the world, and you got to sit basically anywhere you wanted. But of course, teams kind of stuck with teams, especially because if you've ever taken, I'm sure you guys took tests like where you had like those box things that you had to set up on desks way back when. I don't know if you guys ever had. So it was like that, but plexiglass at every seat. So it was weird. Yeah, you couldn't talk through it. So if you wanted to talk to someone, they had to sit behind you at the other table because otherwise you couldn't hear them through the plexiglass. Yeah. So
it's like taking your ACT.
It was very interesting. Yeah, basically, but you could see the person right in front of you. So it was interesting. And then there was an opportunity for some countries and some sports, if they were more than an hour away on the bus ride, could live off site of the village. We unfortunately didn't get that but our bus ride was almost an hour and 15 minutes every day. So I competed at 9, 10, I forget whatever time o'clock, and I had to be on like a 5:30 a.m. bus just to get there like a couple hours early, because I like to kind of just be there, because if something happens, I want to have enough time in case anything happens. But yeah, and then other than that, the only thing that was weird, that was the most weird thing, is like you weren't a prisoner, because we kind of had our own little city in the village, but there was fencing, and if you went out of the fence, they knew about it. It was pretty interesting. Yeah, they wanted nothing to do. Well, Japan was super happy we were there, but they were like, we want no interaction of these athletes with Japan because we don't want it to spread. So that was the rule. And then, like I said before, you had to leave 48 hours after your event concluded. So I was there for opening ceremonies, but I wasn't there for closing because I had to leave after my event concluded. And my event was done on the 31st of July, and the Olympics ended on the 3rd or the 4th, I think. I can't remember. But yeah, so I wasn't there for those. And then I was gonna say something else, and now I can't remember.
Oh, you're good.
But yeah, just some weird rules.
Yeah. So did you get to try any like unique cuisine from any other countries, since they had so many things to offer, or did you just kind of keep it solely kind of American, if you will?
I tried some other things because I guess that was one thing. We got there, I think it was I don't want to say a week, but it was pretty close to 5 or 6 days before our training day even started, our official training day right before the match, because we were able to train a little bit on the other days. But so we were there pretty early, so I don't like to completely go outside my comfort zone, because of course in match you don't want your body to, get sick or, get anything wrong to where it can't compete. So I was kind of like branching out a little bit here and there. I would really go through like what it's actually saying in like Japanese or whatever language it was in, and then what it is in English, and then kind of looking at it. And I would also ask the cooks, I'm like, hey, like, what is this? I'm like, is it actually eggs, or is it just like my eyes tricking me into thinking this is like eggs? Yeah.
That's awesome. And I'm glad you mentioned the 48-hour thing too, because, just as a normal person watching the Olympics, as these athletes came home, you know, a lot of times there's like broadcast delays and stuff too. So a lot of times they were
Mhm.
they were home for like interviews on like Good Morning America or whatever have you, like really soon afterwards, and you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. You know, just trying to get them away and get less chance of exposure risk for all those people. So
Yeah. Yep.
so you came, 48 hours, you came home, you came back to Waterford, correct?
Yes, I
So,
flew into Milwaukee. Yep.
yep, I remember seeing the video. I don't know if you posted it or I think it was maybe one of the news outlets there in Wisconsin, probably out of Milwaukee, posted it. I'm assuming it was very emotional for you, probably not having your family there with you as well. I did catch that video of you getting off the plane and everyone was cheering and chanting USA and stuff. So kind of talk about, you know, that and probably what, you know, what that meant to you. And then, you know, being the most popular person in Waterford, Wisconsin.
Yeah, so the days after, of course, like when it happened, it didn't seem real because during the final and everything, like Brian and I really worked as a team, you know, like I carried us through qualification, he carried us through the finals because he shot a higher score than I did, and then I took the winning shot. But no matter what, like we definitely played as a team, and like we were super happy with it. But when you're holding it in your hand, it still doesn't seem real, and it is like the heaviest medal I've ever held in my life. So it was interesting, and like I like would not let anyone take it out of my hands on the way home. Like I safeguarded it because I was like, it at least has to make it home, and then like I will get a little bit less like concerned of where it is at all times, just because I don't want to lose it in a foreign country. Because we had to go through I think flying over to Japan. Actually, I don't think I had another connection in any other country. I think we just flew right into San Francisco, but either way, I didn't want to lose it. So, like going through security was interesting because they were like, oh, you know, like, what's this? And I'm like, well, it's a medal. Like, I just want to make sure I can see it on the belt at all times.
Yeah.
So, like, can it just sit here? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. But, then landing in Milwaukee, I had seen a bunch of other of our athletes go home and, you know, families doing that. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if my family's, you know, not, I don't want to be rude and say smart enough because my parents are a little bit more old fashioned. No, I want to say, I guess, cool enough because,
Yeah.
I mean, they never did surprise stuff for me when I was a kid. It just never was our thing to do surprises. So I was like, I wonder if they're actually going to do it. And when we got close to my gate, all of a sudden the pilot came over the intercom and was like, so guys, just wanted to let everyone know we're getting sprayed with water from 2 fire engines on each side of the plane. No big deal, you know, it's not raining, just wanted to let y'all know, and didn't say what it was for. So I'm like, am I on a flight where like a fallen soldier is coming home?
Yeah.
Because I felt so scared that like I missed something on the flight because I normally have my headphones in. And we get off the plane and like still nothing said, and all of a sudden I look and I see my mom, my dad, and my little sister, and then my boyfriend who lives in Florida at the time. That's actually where I'm currently training right now, and he came up to surprise me. So they were like right outside the gate, which was really special because, you know, no one's allowed in the airport unless I go through security and have a flight. So I was like, oh my god, like you guys are here. And I didn't have my medal out at the time, but they asked like, you should put your medal on and like, you know, walk out of the terminal. And I'm like, okay, like cool, I don't care. I didn't really expect anything. And then the big meeting was actually like outside of the gate, and they actually like hid perpendicular to a wall, so I couldn't even see them until I literally came out of the corner. And
wow.
all of a sudden it was like, congratulations, and it was like, oh my god, like I expected it a little bit, you know, but it wasn't like I knew it was coming. So it was very sweet. I mean, a lot of people that knew me were there from even just like work, job related experiences, not even shooting related. And just, it was super sweet just to see all my family friends, and just have everyone there supporting me. And they made posters, which was so sweet. I got to keep all of them. I love them. I still have them. And yeah, and then I had a lady from, I think it was TMJ News in Milwaukee. Her name is Delaney. She was kind of following my story from the beginning, and she came and filmed the whole thing, which was super sweet. And I didn't know she was coming either. So it was a huge surprise. And then the pilots from the plane actually came up and apologized to me because they were like, we didn't know what the water was for, and we would have absolutely loved to announce that you were on our plane. We
Oh,
did not
sure.
know. And I felt so bad. I was like, I didn't know that was for me, but thank you guys so much. One of my family friends coordinated it with the airline and the airport, and it was super cool. And so yeah, it was a huge welcome home celebration. And then my neighbor across from me and my dad and a bunch of family friends helped plan like a party throughout my hometown for everyone to come meet me, because I haven't seen, any of my high school friends or any of that in a long time. So on like August 14th, we had that. And then that was actually the last day I saw my late coach. He actually got to hold the medal and everything, which is
Oh,
super
that's
special
awesome. That's
to
awesome.
me since he passed away. So there's a picture of me and him hugging on the float that we built that's like super special and near and dear to my heart. So yeah, he got to be there, and then a bunch of my other family friends got to be there, and then I got a congressional statement. I forget what number it is. It says basically I was the first shooting athlete from Wisconsin to medal overseas. So I got put in one of, like, it's like a congressional record. I don't actually know
Yeah.
what it is, and I feel bad. I just don't stare at it 24 hours to remember what it is
No,
exactly.
that's totally cool.
Yeah. And then I got a letter from the governor of Wisconsin, Mr. Evers. I got a flag flown over the Capitol. I got a bunch of plaques from my hometown. I'm like, you guys, I love this. I'm gonna cherish all of it forever. But like, this is too much. I was like, stop spending money on me. Like, let's spend it on something else. So, but it was all very sweet, and I'm very, very grateful for my hometown and all the support I've received ever since. And just hoping I can take all that support and just keep going with it more
Oh
than
yeah.
anything.
Oh yeah.
So
Ben and I are both from a really, really rural area too here in Ohio, and I could only imagine like what something like that would mean to someone from the kind of the same spot. So thanks for sharing that, because I
yeah.
definitely think that a lot of people can kind of visualize that but never truly appreciate it. So I guess
hmm
one thing I did want to mention, so you are a lot more than just shooting. We'll take a break from the shooting thing just for a little bit, but it kind of ties in because as we mentioned earlier, I'm sure your plate is very full. And I want to give you the opportunity. You're a pretty smart cookie as well. So if you want to kind of tie into some of your biology stuff and some of the biomedical sciences and things like that you're working on right now.
Yeah, so during all my shooting experiences, I went to undergraduate school and got my bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences and biotechnology. I did it in 4.5 years, which I was super proud of, because if you add up all the time that I was gone on my shooting endeavors, I was probably gone for at least a semester and a half out of the 4.5 years I was there. So I was very fortunate to all my teachers, everyone that supported me through that, just to get me through and graduate with flying colors and with honors. And now I can take that degree and kind of do whatever I want in the biomedical biology field. And ever since I was a little girl, I've loved working with animals. I find genetics and reproduction fascinating more than anything, especially with food production for human public health. So I've really wanted to tie that into my degree. So I applied to go to veterinary school last year. And I got in, but I didn't get in for the program I wanted to. So I was like, I'm going to hold off a year, especially because I heard the postponement about the Olympics at the
Mm-hmm.
time that
Mm-hmm.
the announcements were made for all the schools I applied to. And I was like, I'm just going to hold off. And I applied and I got into UW-Madison for this fall, but I have to complete a physics class in order to get in. So right now it's kind of one of those like probationary acceptances where if I don't finish the class, I have to unfortunately give my spot away. So I'm currently working on that and on track to completing it on time as of right now. So I hopefully we'll be able to attend Madison this fall for veterinary school. And I kind of just want to roll with that into whatever I can find basically in the food medicine field. But currently I work 3 part-time jobs that I'm very fortunate for all my bosses to let me do this. I work on a horse farm really close to my house. It gives me some animal experience that allows me to basically apply to veterinary school because they love seeing that you're working with animals. I've worked on a family-owned produce farm for 9 years of my life. It's like right down the road from me. I'm actually the second generation of my family to work for that farm. My dad and his siblings, my aunts and uncles, worked for um, the dad of the farm when they were little. So it was kind of cool that I kind of followed in their footsteps. And I've just known the family so long, and they're so good to me. And I'm just able to kind of go right back and work with them. I was working as a full-time lab technician at a genetics lab, and I switched that to part-time because I had to finish this online physics class for graduate school, and I was very fortunate that they were willing to work with me on that as well. So yeah, I live in southeastern Wisconsin, but for my genetics job, I drive about 55 minutes one way just to get there, which of course with gas
Yeah,
prices
no
increasing
doubt.
constantly, yeah, it's very hard. But I love what I do up there. It's super interesting the way it's done. I've always found genetics interesting, and we actually do sex-sorted semen, which is with a bunch of lasers and magnets and staining of the cells. And people think it's weird that I work, with bull ejaculate, but I actually never touch it.
Yeah.
It has to be very sterile. We're
Yeah.
basically, just watching sorters do their magic and tweaking them when we need to, and just collecting whatever they produce. So it's really fascinating, and I love working there. And I really do believe that that was kind of like the crowning glory to getting me into veterinary school, with seeing that on my resume along with everything else.
Oh
So,
yeah. You
yeah.
might want to throw in, Olympic medalist on there or something too on your
Yeah,
resume,
yeah.
right? That's a
Yes. In
character.
addition, yes, my name has Bachelor of Science, so BS, and then OLY I can finally add to my name as well. And I'm hoping at the end of the next, it's either 4, 5, 6, 7 years, depending on if I pick up a PhD or not. It'll be a DMV as well as possibly a PhD after my name. So I'm excited for the future to come. I, of course, am going to keep shooting. I've been telling all of my supporters and sponsors this. I'm like, I will not be set aside. I am going to try and do it side by side. I do not have the will or need to choose between it right now. Madison has given me, or I have been talking with them. They've been giving me the opportunity to, if I need to, take a whole year off and restart back up if I need to. So they've been really really supportive in it as well. So I'm super excited for the future to come.
Definitely. And so you mentioned that you're down in Florida. So kind of going back to the shooting side of things, like what's your schedule looking like right now in terms of training? Like how many shots are you taking a day, or how many days are you training right now? And then kind of tying into that, are you looking ahead to some World Cups? Or are you just kind of looking towards potentially Paris in 2024?
Yeah, so currently, right now, I didn't make the national travel team this last spring. I kind of had some personal things going on. I switched my firearm up a little bit for the long run more than anything, just because I think the setup that I'm currently working with, which is only 8 months old now, is going to help me be a little bit more consistent and have way better and more consistent scores in the future. So I switched that up probably like 3 months before the national team selection was for this last spring. And of course, I didn't do too well. That's completely expected, and I really didn't have that much expectation going into it. And I felt like it would be nice to kind of take a little bit of a break, work a little bit, especially because I have to pay for graduate school this fall.
No doubt.
So it really wasn't that big of a deal for me to make this one. It was kind of nice to have a break. Currently, I'm still training at least 2 days a week. I try to go on Wednesdays and Sundays, or a Saturday, because that's when I have breaks from my job to do so. I was fortunate that a bunker was built really super close to my house, about 30 minutes from my house, about 2 or 3 years. No, it was finished up actually right before the Olympics happened. So yeah, it hasn't been that long since it was built. So I'm able to kind of go and train there. Otherwise, I have to go all the way over to Michigan for a couple days, because I'm not just going to drive 5 hours one way to go practice for a little bit and then drive back. So yeah, so I have to take time off to do that. But at least once a month for the past, since March, I've been going to either Michigan or Florida to just get a whole week of just solid training, nothing but in the gun, competition mode, anything I can basically, throw at myself for the whole week. And then I'll go back into just kind of a normal, like 2 days staying in the gun, making sure everything feels right, consistently. And I don't really have a set number of shots I take. It kind of just depends on the day, what I'm working on at the time. So if I shoot one round and I feel good, I'll stop. I'll be done. And that's just when I'm training on Wednesdays and Sundays back home. During the week when I'm either in Michigan or Florida, I'll be kind of in between. Some days I'll shoot 8 rounds over the course of 10 hours, so it's really not that much. A lot of people think, wow, 8 rounds in a day. I'm like, yeah, but it's not, 8 rounds in 4 hours. I'm like, I'm not beating myself up. There's no point in shooting back to back to back rounds. That doesn't teach you anything. And those rounds don't actually consist of me shooting a full round. It'll consist of me backing up targets, trying to work on some stuff. If I'm inconsistent with a move, or if I'm jumpy, or if I'm just doing something consistently that I notice, I'll try and work on it and tweak it out. And then once I get that down, I'll go back to kind of what I was working on for the day. And it kind of just depends on the day. Like, I'll wake up and my eyes don't feel 100%, and eyes are really everything in this sport.
Sure.
So some days I'm like, you know what, I'm really gonna go out and just make sure that my soft focus is as best as it can be, or as soon as that target comes out, my eyes are locking on that target when I need it to do so. So it's a lot of here and there. Some days I wake up and my legs don't feel normal. I don't know, it's just normal growing aches and pains of growing old, I guess.
Oh, listen to her.
Yeah.
Listen to her, the 24-year-old.
But
No.
yeah, so it's every other day, like stuff changes that I'll be training for. So
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, that's all I had for you today. Andrew, did you have anything? Oh, you know what we didn't cover? And Andrew's probably interested about this, but you want to give us, are you still with Kohler? Did I pronounce that right? Kohler Arms?
Yes.
Yeah. So Andrew, we need to order some of these shotguns for our store. Ben and I were looking at the price of these things, and oh my gosh, I'm assuming that they're definitely donated for sure. But if you want to give a chance and kind of talk about your setup, I think some people would be interested to know like what it is that you're actually shooting with, like gauge and size and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started with Kohler, I was just finishing my sophomore year of high school. It was kind of like a very, very early actually, hold on. I'm doing that wrong. It was because it was an early graduation gift. It was just finishing up my senior year of high school. So I got it like basically right before I went to college. And my parents surprised me by bringing me to the company, and I actually really didn't want one. I'm saying that with like all respect due to the company that I'm with now. Like, I love them with all my heart. And Sean, of course, knows this story. And I was at a competition and I was trying out a bunch of different guns, and I just really didn't like the feel of it, and I wasn't really old enough to kind of know what I wanted yet in a firearm. So I was like, I don't think this is for me yet. And I knew how expensive it was. So I told my parents, I don't want to spend the money if I don't feel confident that it's going to benefit me in the long run. Well, my dad didn't listen to that. The next week that we were home, we scheduled a meeting with Kohler, and I was able to walk around the building and see how everything was made, because they made most everything in-house. Some stuff they still had to ship out, but now with their production, they're actually mainly in-house, from what I've seen. But at the time, some of their stuff was done in and some of it wasn't. So we were just walking around the factory. They showed me like the wood room, like where I could pick out my stock and forearm. And by the end of the day, we basically had pieces of wood selected. We had the setup selected, and I was super excited to get going, because it was basically like, an awesome present that was expected to come.
For sure.
Yeah. And so my gun was actually designed to be an all-around gun. So it wasn't a trap gun. It's called a skeet setup, actually, just because it's a little more adjustable. So I have what I had at the time, and what is still very similar now, is I had a 12 gauge shotgun. It's an over and under 30-inch barrels, and it has a low profile adjustable rib on it. So basically, with a little bit of a screw undone, I can basically raise and lower my rib on my gun to shoot either higher or lower depending on what I needed for my setup. And then the wood was custom fit to me, so I was able to work with Mr. Jeff for I think a whole day at the time to get it actually to fit my personal needs, being, you know, a female who needs a little bit more cast in her stock and being a little bit shorter. So it was really sweet, and I actually found a piece of wood that wasn't supposed to be in where I was looking, and Jeff was not happy I found it. He wasn't like disappointed I found it, but he said, that's really not supposed to be here, but if you want it, it's yours. And it is one of the most beautiful pieces of wood I've ever seen. I still have it. It's a piece of clairol. It's got really deep red-brown tones with a bunch of black swirls in it. I have a bunch of pictures on my Instagram about it. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful pieces I've ever seen. And they paired up a forearm with it. I got the gun, I think we ordered it in March. I got it like right before the summer started and started working with it, and basically just, you know, scores were up and way down and then up again and then mediocre. It was, you know, it's just what comes with a new piece of equipment. Being a little bit younger at the time, it kind of, you know, it was, you know, really fussing with my confidence level. I wasn't really gaining any confidence from the gun whatsoever. It wasn't until about probably the summer of my freshman year of college that I really started to work with it, just because being at that young of an age, you know, you can take all the advice in the world, but until the individual athlete actually takes the time to understand what everyone's saying and like understand what feedback the firearm is giving to you, understand what your body is giving the feedback to you, and kind of like taking it all in, you really don't understand what you're looking for. So I finally kind of just started to jot down some notes of like what I was feeling, what I felt the gun was doing, and this and that, and we kind of started to piece it together, and my scores started slowly, consistently rising, and I ended up loving the thing within the next 6 months. It was going really well. Kohler did everything for it. Right before I actually went to my first ever USA, my first ever selection match in Fort Benning, Georgia, my stock ended up breaking on me. I was actually, it didn't break on me, it broke on them when they took it apart. But it was cracking in my hands, and I was like, I think it's gonna break. And sure enough, I sent it to them because I live 30 minutes from them, and they took it apart and they're like, yep, it broke in 3 pieces in our hands. And it was basically just the integrity of the wood. It wasn't anything that they did that I did. Because it doesn't have straight grain wood, it has a lot of weak points in it, and I have such a small hand grip, there was not a lot of wood around basically the grip and the trigger guard. So there's not a lot for the gun to basically push back on. So it's all the force of shooting and closing and travel. It took it apart. So they reinforced it, put it back together, and I was able to go to Georgia with it. And of course they sent me a backup stock because I was freaking out that it was going to break again.
No doubt.
Yeah, so they were super nice about that. They've just been great. Always been like super upkept. They've always changed everything for me. Like nothing aside from the major pieces, like the barrels, the wood and everything, is over 6 months old. They are constantly replacing springs for me and everything, making sure I have everything I need. I always carry 2 triggers with me just in case if something happens. I've never had a problem, but they've just been so good with me. And my new setup actually isn't that different. We modified I still have all the old stuff, of course, but I have wanted to go to a lower rib more than anything for the past year now, even when the Olympics was happening, but of course I had to forget about that. It's just because when you have a high rib like that, there's a lot more separation between where your eyes are and where the barrel is. So if you mess up that spacing or that connection, it can be a very, how do I say this? It can be like a huge flaw. So like I could miss a couple targets from it basically. And I started to notice it over the last 2 years, and it really didn't get to me, but it kind of just started to like creep up on me and like kind of be one of those like nervous things that I have in the back of my head over the past year. And I went to them and they're like, yeah, we'd love to put you in a new gun. So I have the same receiver for right now. I will be getting a new one in the near future. I just haven't done the switch yet. So I have the same receiver and all the metal pieces of my old one with a new barrel that has a flatter rib, which I am deeply in love with. It's beautiful. And then I have new wood that's just a little bit more tweaked to me. It's got a bigger palm swell, but if you line up the two guns, they're almost mirror images of each other. It's literally just the 2 inches of drop on the wood and the rib. That's the only difference.
Sweet,
so
sweet. No, it sounds like that birthday gift or the graduation gift definitely is working out for you for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, like I said, that's kind of all I had for you today. Unless the guys have anything else. Ben's shaking his head. So, Andrew, if you got anything else for her?
The only question that I have, and this is a lot of people don't talk about this, but do you find that glasses change what your eyes do in certain conditions?
She's got a sponsorship for this, so be careful.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So I currently shoot Rangers, and I believe that, like, not the glasses themselves. I believe, it's the color. So I guess if that's what you're referring to, absolutely.
Correct,
Especially
lens color.
because, yeah, so everyone's eyes see differently. So for my eyes, I found that the lighter I can go, the better I can be. So some days I can shoot in my lightest lens possible and I can still shoot fantastic. My eyes are hurting me at the end of the day, but it's beneficial to me. And I'm a girl that likes bronze and orange and yellowish hues. I think those make the target stand out to me more than anything. And there's also a fine line between seeing the target and seeing just a big bright orange flash in your face, because a lot of kids, when they're doing colors and lenses, I'm even doing this with my little sister right now, is she doesn't understand the concept, and a lot of them don't understand the concept between seeing the target, seeing the ring, seeing the dimples, like seeing the different parts of a target and just seeing a bright orange ball in your face, because you don't want to see the bright orange ball, because that can cause so many different things, like muzzle jump, tightness, in your muscles when you see it, like basically just a panic attack, like when the target comes out, like, oh, there it is, instead of just target, and something that I like to work on in practice a lot is I like to pick a point of the target to shoot. So I'll actually try and shoot like left, top, bottom, right, whatever when I'm training. So it really matters to me, like what lens color I have in for the conditions that I'm in. And ranges in the US are have it as a rule, and I stand by this rule because I love my eyes, but there have been times where like glasses aren't the case. It's super humid, there's no wind, and they keep fogging up, and there's no way to prevent it. So has been competitions where I've actually had to take my lenses off, and I've had to deal with the struggle of that, the nerves of like, well, what if something does happen when my gun is in my face, loaded, and it goes wrong. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's a very interesting topic. I don't stand by it so much in the fact that I help people choose lens color, because like I said, I very much believe that everyone's different. Like, again, I like those certain hues, but like my partner, he likes purples and like bright red oranges, and I can't do those because I think purple illuminates too much green, and then I don't see the target as well. So it's kind of just personal preference more than anything. I don't push it, but I do love my glasses, and I love the contrast that it provides me. So
Glasses are a huge deal in seeing the target, and I mean, you probably shoot a fiber optic front sight, is that right?
I actually shoot just so on my gun I actually have 2 mid beads as my sight, and then I have a tiny little high vis piece of green just to give me a little bit of color, because you want to see it in the background, but you don't want it to take over your eyes tracking the target. So I actually have the tiniest sights that you'll ever see on a shotgun.
Gotcha.
So.
No, that's understood. Pretty much everything I shoot has an optic on it, like red dot, or
Okay.
if I shoot 3-gun, the rifle's got magnification. And I use yellow lenses. So there's that whole difference there. So
I mean, I have every color under the moon lenses that Ranger has on the market. But I have, the 2 or 3 or 4 colors that I like on a personal day, and there's some days where I'll go between all 3 of them, and there's some days where I'll stick with the one. So just constant light changes is very, very interesting in our sport.
Oh yeah,
So.
and not to mention you're trying to hit something that's
Absolutely.
going 75 miles an hour.
Yep.
picking high, picking low, picking middle on something that fast. That's amazing. So
Yep.
Now, I have one small question. I know Andrew's firearms that he uses are very like finicky with ammunition. Does your shotgun have to shoot us? Like, do you have to load your own shells, or is there a specific shell that runs best in your gun? I know it's just a single shot. You're not doing any, you know, it's not like rapid fire or anything, but do you find that a hand load or a specific type of shell works better for what you're doing?
Yeah, so I guess I'm gonna take this in 2 ways. So one, my gun actually has it printed on it, do not use use only factory loaded ammunition. I have run reloads through it. It is not a problem. But actually for my sport, they don't require you to use factory loaded ammunition. They highly recommend it though, because during my sport, you are constantly subject to a bunch of different tests. So you have to go through an equipment test, which is actually, they don't look at your ammo because not everyone has their ammo at this time, but they look at your vest. If you wear a vest, they look at your outfit, your attire, your shoes, your hat. You can only have like certain logos on your hat and stuff and on your clothes. Your gun can only have certain things on it. Like they look at the porting on the gun if you have it. They look at all the specs on the gun, and then they're like, okay, good, and they give you a sticker. For ammo, they will actually randomly pull names out of a hat or out of a computer system, and on the course of fire, they can come up and just pull ammunition from your pocket and test it. And basically what they're looking for is our shells have to be 24 gram, 7.5 or 7/8 ounce, sorry. It can be any size shot you want. So for me, I use 7.5. Otherwise, sometimes I'll use 8s if I can find them. But I will really not use 9s because they're just not beneficial in my sport. But the other Olympic discipline, skeet, will use 9s because that's beneficial to their sport. But they probably won't shoot 7.5s. So they look for those specific requirements of our ammunition. And if I forget what the variances are, but if you're over or under some of those checks, you can still compete, but if you shoot a top score, you will not be allowed to shoot in the medal match. Like
wow,
they won't let you. And then if you do make the medal match, all of their ammo gets tested. So you actually put all the ammunition in a box and they pull some from it. And if your ammo doesn't meet requirements, you can't shoot. So
That's very
yeah, you'll actually see when we go overseas, we'll either ship our own ammo. So USA Shooting is sponsored by Federal, so they'll ship Federals, or Winchester will try and ship, because I'm sponsored by them, they'll ship ammunition for me to the country if they can. Sometimes it's really hard to get ammunition into a country, so we kind of just have to bite the bullet and shoot whatever is there on the grounds. So overseas, I've shot RC4s, Fiocchis, everything under the moon, but when possible, I do try and shoot Winchesters. I just think those pattern the best through my gun overall, and also that's the company I partnered with, and I love working really closely with them, so I try to back them up as much as I can. But yeah, there's some countries where you can't even get the ammo that you need or want to shoot into, so you kind of just have to settle for whatever they have. So yeah, ammo's a touchy subject too. Lots of rules in my sport, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you gotta find something for the PED side of your sport, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Maddy, again, I just want to thank you for your time. You are a very busy woman, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here in Central Ohio. And, we wish you the best of luck, and we'll definitely be rooting for you going forward. Hopefully we can have another conversation after Paris and when you got the nice, bright, shiny gold one around your neck. How's that sound?
That is the plan. I'm currently working toward it, so trying to keep my knowledge in those rules at least of how to make the 2024 Olympic team. So that's the plan, and hopefully we can make it happen. And I appreciate you guys for the call today and for Winchester connecting us. That was very nice of them.
It really was. Real fast before we let you go, where can people find you on social? I know you got an Instagram. We mentioned a couple times where they can see some of these pictures of your firearm.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a Facebook account, an athlete page, Madelynn Bernau, kind of exactly how it sounds. And then I also have an Instagram page. I haven't gotten into Twitter yet. I will have to look at that. And then TikTok, that's just not my thing as of right now. So
Same here.
yeah,
Same here.
Facebook and Instagram is how you can find me. I've been a little bit off the media, just trying to get through that physics class right now and trying to, get that on track so I can keep moving on with my career path. But it will start to be updated soon, especially because we're traveling soon. I'm actually headed up to Michigan in a little bit for a clinic up there that I'm working with a bunch of kids at. So I'll be on social media soon enough.
There you go. There we go. And we'll link all that in the show notes of this episode for those of you that are listening. Again, thank you so much for taking the time. Andrew, thank you for taking the time as well. And we'll catch we'll catch you guys on the next one. Hopefully, like I said, after Paris. So best of luck to you moving forward, Maddy. And again, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone, that's all we have for you today. We hope you enjoyed that conversation with Maddy. It really was an honor to have her on our show. As always, we appreciate you listening. Please leave us a rating and share this episode with a friend. And until next time, enjoy the pursuit.